there's no real regulatory solution to what you're doing to try and ban what you're trying to accomplish. Like, what is the solution here? You ban CNC machines, or you ban metal stock, you ban sharing. I mean, that's kind of where you have to get into these. Like, it's not real. Even if you try to ban these things, it wouldn't stop.
We know what they want. They want an act of Congress that says no one can build a gun. I mean, that's what they want. Now, will they get it? Maybe, by defining everything as ghost guns and stuff. And we've seen, perhaps you intend to get into this, like Maryland's latest bill. And, there's these state and municipal ordinances I'm seeing that say, well, we ban ghost guns. But what this actually means is we ban your ability to either buy components to make a firearm, or we ban online sellers' ability to sell you components to make a firearm. And that's troubling. And I think it relies on a cynicism, which is true, that the Supreme Court won't intervene. This country is still splitting along these lines where some people are going to easily be able to make guns, have guns, and some people won't.
I just think, I do want to get into that. I think that's a good transition into some of these state laws and some of these legal fights that you're going through over this exact issue. But, first, I just think that the philosophical point, which is something you've been heavily leaning on your entire career, right? Since you first designed the Liberator, which was the 3D printed firearm, years ago, and got a lot of attention over that. There's kind of this philosophical approach to the whole operation of, look, you can make all the laws you want, but with technology where it's at now and the ease of sharing this information, you can't. It's really impossible to stop the signal. This is sort of the FPC meme, which comes from obviously Firefly, but once the information is out there, once the knowledge is out there, it's not really possible to stop this. And now the barrier to entry for making your own firearm has become, with these latest developments, so low that you're really asking this philosophical question about how could you ever try and regulate these things fully ever again?
This is a fair point. So I'd like to follow on. I mean, our technology, or let's say our company, comes around the same time that WikiLeaks came of age, and really Bitcoin came to public consciousness. So like 3D guns, Bitcoin, WikiLeaks, these all they arrive at the same moment. Even that moment of like Edward Snowden, where we realize the internet doesn't actually allow perfect 20th century regulation of the things we care about anymore. and it's not like people couldn't make guns before. I see this all the time. For many years, people are like, well, so what? I could always make a gun. Yes, that's always been true. But this, the scariest part of 3D guns, I think, and then maybe some of the rest of the philosophy of our projects is that there's this downloadable component to what we're talking about. So like there are files for a gun that you can download, and you realize to some degree you can basically go into programmable machine tools. You got them directly from the internet. There's no place to insert a regulatory authority. And so it becomes kind of laughable to consider a police of this process. And that's what WikiLeaks and Bitcoin are about. Like they're perfect because there's nobody in between, and the information is liquid, instantaneous. And then the more you try to push it around and regulate it, suppress it, the more it spreads itself all over the internet. So these things are related in this way. And that's right. That's our philosophy. And that's where our company came from, this kind of digital libertarian place. And we take platform technologies and attempt to demonstrate basically over and over again that the internet allows, for our vision of the future, far more than any alternative.
And we'll get into some of the drawbacks or critiques of this in a little bit. But first, I want to start with what you were alluding to earlier here, which is some people do still try to regulate these things. It hasn't stopped people from even while you can make this philosophical argument that it's kind of pointless, or at least futile, perhaps in the end. There are attempts right now across the country to try and restrict exactly these technologies, and they go about it in a number of different ways. And so I was hoping, you could give a little update on the latest in some of the federal lawsuits and then some of the state laws. Like perhaps we could start with New Jersey. What they've tried to do seems to be one of the most extreme examples that involves really kind of trying to shut down the information sharing side of this process. Can you talk a little bit about that and where the legal case is with New Jersey?
I'll say that the origins of the state law attempts to police the information comes from the failure of the federal attempts to police. So for the first 5 years of 3D guns, We were being attacked by the U.S. State Department, and to some degree the Commerce Department, but that police action failed and ultimately was settled in court. And I think this somehow, this happened during the Trump administration, and it just shocked the conscience of the progressive, attorneys general across the country and all the liberals. And so they demanded that their state attorneys do something. And so New Jersey, Phil Murphy, they passed the first of its kind state law where they're like, well, fine, if anyone in our state can access such a website or download such a file, it's a felon for the provider of the file. You see, so if anybody on a cell phone in New York, but is a resident of New Jersey, accesses devcat.com and downloads a file for a 3D gun or a magazine, it's actually a felony for Cody Wilson to have provided that and not screened that out. And this, I think, is one of the first of these kind of fragmentary laws that we're beginning to see these states participate in for tit for tat. Like now we've seen Texas' weird abortion law, for example, which allows people to sue providers, and then same thing in California. Gavin Newsom promises, look, in my session this year, I'm going to allow private residents in California to sue any ghost gun company in the country. So we're splitting up into this fractal territory where states are just going to basically create whatever kind of federal police power they want, but they'll have a sophisticated way of avoiding, let's say, judicial scrutiny of it, and then just allow people to tear themselves up in private lawsuits over it. So New Jersey's is kind of the first of that kind where they say, well, anything, if you allow me to download it, if you allow me to see it, if you email me about it, whatever, that's a felony. And that's so intense and extreme. But their cynicism is, well, it's going to take you about 5 or 6 years to probably sort that out in our courts. So it's worth it. And true enough, right? I've been suing on that law since 2018. I finally got jurisdiction over the Attorney General of New Jersey in Texas. I had to go to the Fifth Circuit to get it. And I've been waiting at the Fifth Circuit again for another 6 months on whether or not it's illegal. Finally, at last, And I'm going to die of COVID before I find out.
Hopefully not.
But it's just things like this all the time. And, we're always looking at California, trying to innovate, or create some version of it. But Washington State has a very similar law to New Jersey's, although it's more ambiguous. It's kind of more modest. It's a little more afraid of itself. I've seen similar laws in New Mexico. And now individual cities like, San Jose's in the news now for their tax thing, their liability thing. But San Diego has made it illegal for you to basically have files or kits. Same thing with San Francisco, no kits. So each little municipality starts ticking things off or joining in lawsuits against Paul Moretti, things like this. So it's broken down at this micro level where there's just a ton of private party lawsuits, and then you're hoping, okay, the Ninth Circuit's not going to help me out, but maybe the Fifth Circuit will, maybe the Third Circuit will, if you see what I'm saying.